A narrow strip of land can become a strategic problem before a convoy ever moves. The Suwałki Gap is usually described as a map vulnerability. That description isn't wrong, but it is incomplete. The real issue isn't the shape of the border alone. It's the way roads, rail lines, power grids, air defense coverage, and political timing all crowd into one exposed connection. Between northeastern Poland and southern Lithuania sits the land bridge that ties the Baltic states to the rest of NATO by ground. To the west is Kaliningrad. To the east is Belarus. That geography makes the corridor famous. But fame can flatten the story. A line on the map doesn't explain how reinforcement actually works. Reinforcement needs paved routes, bridges, fuel, traffic control, repair crews, staging space, communications, and the confidence to move early. That's where the Suwałki problem becomes sharper. The question isn't only whether the corridor could be attacked. The harder question is whether the surrounding system can absorb pressure without slowing itself down. For years, defense analysis has treated this area as a place where speed matters. If the Baltic states were threatened, every hour of political hesitation would make the military problem heavier. Ground forces don't appear at the front because leaders announce resolve. They arrive because logistics routes stay open long enough to carry them. The corridor therefore functions as both a road problem and a decision problem. Its geography forces NATO to think about the first hours of a crisis. That's why Via Baltica matters beyond ordinary transportation. A road that supports civilian trade in peacetime can also support movement, evacuation, and reinforcement under stress. When a route is upgraded, the change isn't dramatic on a satellite image. The asphalt still looks ordinary. The political meaning comes from what the road lets Allied forces do faster. If units can move with fewer bottlenecks, the corridor becomes harder to isolate by delay alone. If traffic has to squeeze through weak links, the vulnerability isn't only enemy fire. It's congestion, confusion, and late mobilization. This is the part of the Suwałki debate that often disappears behind the phrase, NATO's weak point. A weak point isn't just a place where an adversary could push. It's also a place where defenders must coordinate many systems at once. That includes electricity. Poland and the Baltic states have been looking at grid protection with unusual urgency. Substations, transformers, control rooms, and replacement parts aren't glamorous military assets. Yet a damaged grid can slow rail, communications, command posts, fuel distribution, and civilian resilience. If the lights fail around a corridor, the map doesn't close, but the operating environment gets worse. That's why anti-drone nets and concrete protection around energy facilities matter. They aren't a substitute for armed defense. They're a way of making the corridor less brittle. Brittleness is the hidden enemy in this story. A brittle system can look strong until many small disruptions arrive together. A drone alarm closes airspace. A cyber incident slows a control center. A transformer loss strains repair capacity. A border scare forces civilian traffic onto the same roads needed by military movement. No single event has to be decisive. The accumulation is the pressure. That's what makes the Suwałki Gap different from a simple battlefield marker. It's a place where geography invites compression. Compression means many urgent functions are forced into limited space. The Baltic states need a reliable connection south. Poland needs credible movement north. NATO needs the political machinery to recognize danger early enough. Civilian authorities need to keep society working while defense movement accelerates. The corridor can't be protected by one spectacular weapon or one symbolic exercise. It needs road capacity, rail planning, air defense layers, grid hardening, cyber resilience, and rehearsed command habits. That doesn't mean a conflict there is inevitable. It means deterrence depends on making the cost of disruption look high and the chance of quick success look low. The Suwałki Gap becomes less tempting when it no longer looks like a switch that can be flipped. That requires more than troops on a map. It requires the visible ability to sustain movement under pressure. The public discussion often imagines a sudden armored thrust across a narrow corridor. Military planners have to imagine a Messier beginning. They have to ask what happens before the first clear headline. What if pressure starts through migration tactics, airspace violations, sabotage rumors, drone probes, or power grid incidents? What if the first goal isn't occupation but paralysis? What if the most useful attack is to make Allied decision-making seem too risky or too slow? That possibility changes the corridor's meaning. A land bridge can be threatened without being immediately seized. A reinforcement route can be weakened by uncertainty before it is physically blocked. The answer isn't panic. The answer is redundancy. Redundancy means more usable road capacity. Redundancy means alternate staging areas. Redundancy means protected energy nodes and stockpiled components. Redundancy means commanders and civilian agencies know who has authority before the pressure starts. A corridor defended only by last-minute improvisation is a corridor that advertises hesitation. A corridor prepared across infrastructure, energy, and logistics tells a different story. It tells a potential adversary that disruption won't automatically become isolation. That's the actual strategic test, not whether the Suwałki Gap is narrow. Everyone can see that it is narrow. The test is whether narrowness can be turned into leverage. If roads, grids, and command systems stay functional, the geography loses some of its power. If they fracture, the map becomes more dangerous than its size suggests. That's why the corridor should be understood as infrastructure deterrence. The phrase sounds less dramatic than a tank column. A useful way to read the corridor is to separate access from assurance. Access means a route exists on the map. Assurance means allies believe the route will still function under pressure. Those aren't the same condition. A road may be open in law but unusable in practice if traffic control, repair crews, or security units are overwhelmed. A rail connection may exist but move too slowly if gauges, loading sites, or priority rules aren't prepared. An energy link may support normal life but become a strategic liability if it lacks protection at the nodes that matter. That's why the civilian and military sides can't be separated cleanly. The same road that carries trade may have to carry armor, fuel trucks, ambulances, and repair teams. The same communications network that serves peacetime administration may have to coordinate reinforcement and public warning. The same grid that powers households may keep rail signaling and command facilities working. A crisis wouldn't wait for each system to solve its own problem in sequence. The pressure would arrive all at once. For NATO, the goal is to deny the idea of a quick fait accompli. That phrase is often used in strategy debates, but its meaning is practical here. An adversary would want the corridor to look too dangerous, too confused, or too late to reinforce. The defense answer is to make reinforcement look routine, even in abnormal conditions. Exercises help, but exercises alone aren't enough. The route has to be physically prepared. Local authorities need rehearsed traffic rules. Engineers need access to spare parts. Grid operators need protective plans that fit the military timeline. Air defense planners need to know which nodes can't be left uncovered. None of these measures guarantee success. Together, they make disruption less cheap. The most serious Suwałki lesson is that deterrence can be built out of mundane readiness. A hardened substation, a completed road segment, or a tested rerouting plan can change the calculation before troops move. That's why the corridor shouldn't be discussed only in wartime terms. Peacetime construction is part of the deterrence message. Peacetime maintenance is part of the deterrence message. Peacetime bureaucratic clarity is part of the deterrence message. If the system works on an ordinary Monday, it has a better chance of working during an extraordinary week. The reverse is also true. If the peacetime system is slow, underfunded, or ambiguous, a crisis will expose it immediately. The narrowness of the gap is permanent. The fragility around it is a policy choice. That distinction matters because it points to what can actually be changed. No government can move Kaliningrad or Belarus. But governments can widen the set of usable routes, protect the most sensitive nodes, and speed up decisions. The Suwałki Gap is therefore less a prophecy than a test of preparation. It's also more useful. Modern deterrence isn't only about what a military can destroy. It's about what a society can keep running while danger rises. In the Suwałki Gap, that means the road, the substation, the rail plan, the fuel point, and the political clock all belong to the same story. The pressure point is visible, but the mechanism is distributed. A future crisis wouldn't ask whether the corridor matters. It would ask whether the systems around it are ready before they're tested. That's the uncomfortable lesson of Suwałki. The most important ground corridor in a crisis may be decided by the least cinematic pieces of infrastructure. A transformer yard, a highway interchange, a logistics timetable, and a decision made early enough can shape the board more than a dramatic map arrow. The gap is famous because it is narrow. It's dangerous because so much has to work inside and